G'day and welcome to episode 15 of DJF Live. On today's show, I want to take a look at the brand new Canon R5C. It's been out for a couple of months. I've had this one on back order at B&H for quite a few months. And then last week, just before I had a shoot filming some buildings on Billionaire's Row in Sydney, I'm back in Australia, in New York City, then that is where this thing came into stock and I was able to use it on the shoot, which was both video and stills. So what I did for that shoot was combine it with an R5 so I could have a stills camera that's dedicated with a lens, so I'm not switching it out all the time. But then I had the R5C primarily for video and also being able to shoot with stills as well. So I just want to take a look at how that performed on today's shoot. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments as always, and we'll take a quick look at who is here. We have Namaste from India. Good to have you here. Go to Web Technologies. Eric, as always, welcome and good to have you here from Rochester. And Ray is here, and Jules, and John is joining us from England. So we got a good turnout today. So good to have all you guys here. If you have any questions about the R5C, let me know. And of course, if you have any companion questions, drop that in, and we'll see if we can get to that at the end. So first up, so I have a property developer client that I have shot for many years in New York City, and one of their buildings is Central Park Tower, which is a brand new high-rise. If you're familiar with New York, you would see that from Central Park as you look back on it. It's going to be, the whole skyline has changed, and I needed to get some high-res stills and also high-res video for their branding. So I'm going to show you some of the videos and photos that I shot for them today. It's just going to be exteriors. I can't show any interiors in terms of release and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I guess to start with, the great thing about, probably the best thing about the R5C is the codecs. They really have improved a lot over the R5, and that's what makes it so good. So let me see if I can flick this one on, find the spot here. And you're just going to see a shot of the desk there. I might actually zoom in a bit so we can go right in here. Okay, so as you'll notice, this switch is a little bit different to the R5. It's got a dedicated photo mode and video mode. So if I switch across to photo, this is how long it takes to clean in the sensor and move across. So you can't just like shoot them straight away, like it's still booting up here. There we go. Now we're ready to shoot, and it takes a couple of seconds. The stills mode is pretty much the same, so I'm not going to really go into that because it's the same as the R5. But if I switch back across, again, we've got to turn it off, and it's turning back on. So you got to think about that in terms of your stills. So it was really like having to flick between actual modes. But what I do love about the way the R5C is laid out is that they have different buttons, and they have a dedicated cine menu, which is great in terms of getting waveforms, and particularly the codecs. So let's take a look at the codecs. If we go in here to, all right. So I actually shot most of my stuff in standard RAW, and I realized later that only allows you to go up to 2997. So what I think I'm going to do in future is use the raw light, because then that will enable you to shoot up to 60 frames a second, and it's still, and here you go. Okay, so this is one of the things in terms of power. It says this lens does not work with the current record settings and attached power source, meaning that this camera is now a 9-volt is now a 9-volt camera, as opposed to, and it's got like the regular batteries that you put in here are like 7.2 volts, and the 5D Mark IV I think was an 8-volt camera. So they've increased the power capacity of the camera, but the batteries that the LP6 and H or whatever don't have the capacity to run all of that raw recording as well as send power through to the lens. So that's the challenge that we are facing there. However, said that, I did find if I, nope, the lens does not work. Okay, so that's for 60p mode, but if I jump back over to, let me just go down to 2398 and then get rid of menu, you'll notice the focus has come back here. That's my rack over the back there. So there are a lot of modes. So example, I'm shooting RAW here, 24 frames a second, and I can actually use the autofocus, and I assume image stabilization, even though this particular camera does not have that. So that is something to consider when you're trying to run this, particularly like on a gimbal. So one of the good things about running this camera is it's much lighter. So with the Ronin gimbal, that it's just so much lighter than carrying like I don't know, a C200 or one of those cameras. And I did find that the USB to USB-C, sorry, USB-C to USB-C cable that goes from the Ronin into the camera does give you actual focus control on the wheel down here, and also stop recording. So when you are, if I can cut across here, see on the base here, when you are firing up here on the Ronin, that actually is going to work with the R5C. So that's great. Just means that particularly when you're shooting on those high sort of expensive codecs, you know, you're burning through a lot of data and you don't want to have to reach around and button on and then get reframed. You know, you can be ready to go and hit record and do your shot and minimize the amount of footage that you've got going on. All right, so I'm just going to go back to these codecs here, because this is flying away here. Not only, so for RAW is great because for something like this where I need high detail shot for property development, it sort of gives me all of that data that I in post-production can do something with. But you don't always want to shoot in that, and that's where this is so much more robust than my previous 5D Mark IV, and I would say even the R5 to some degree. We've also got a very common post-production workflow here with XF AVC, so that's going to build into like this 10-bit footage that a lot of editors around the world are going to be familiar with, so that's really robust. And then there's a newer sort of MP4 HEVC, which is kind of something that you would see on the iPhone, but that enables you to put the 422 10-bit. So if I click through to that, then in the picture profile, if I go edit, hang on, select a picture profile, you can actually select like a, coming down here, HLG, or a Rec 2020 color space. I'm just going to go to user 10 and edit that, and it's unprotected, and we can scroll through here. So these are all the color spaces that we can use. We can use Canon Log 3, PQ, BT 2020, HLG 2020. So this is going to give you a broader color space for HDR and that kind of stuff. And the other thing that I've noticed about that is, I'm just going to get out of this, come back to so many menus, is if you look at here, main resolution bitrate, it'll actually show you the megabits per second. So this, where are we? Go back to this one. Okay, so if I'm on raw light and I come back here, it's going to show me, I can't actually change it because it's raw, so it's like straight off the sensor and there's nothing to change. But we're shooting basically a gigabit per second. So it's 1030 megabits per second. And then if I bump up the frame rate here, then we're going to get 2570 megabits per second. So this is like the absolute max that the CFast cards can handle. And that is like a ton of data going through there. So we'll just move this one down. And if I go back to XF AVC, you can see we're hitting for 4K 160 megabits per second in long op. So we probably want, let's do UHD in intraframe. So 410 megabits. And then if we go down to MP4, so this is 10-bit 422 in the newer HEVC codec, 4K 10-bit and 2398 and UHD, and we're hitting 135 megabit per second. So this is a much more efficient codec, which is meant to give you the same quality of footage, so that it, you know, it is compressed, but it's going to give you a ton more data and color space to work with, and that's one of the things that makes this camera really powerful, because I can tell you, coming from a 5D Mark IV where it's shooting in motion JPEG, there's just like, it's a very inefficient codec and not something that's particularly good to grade with easier. So as well, so that is probably one of the main things that I'm keen about working with this camera for. It's 8K RAW 60p, and it's fairly efficient in terms of codecs, I would say. So let's take a look at some of the footage. If I've got this lined up here, Davinci Resolve and footage. Okay, just moving this across here. It's got to get organized because I was bringing things in. I'll start with footage and then I'll go on to the stills because I actually had some trouble with the stills that they're not actually recognized in Capture One, although Lightroom has been updated to get them. So let's take a look at this one. All right, so some footage here. This is a CRM footage, and I'm just going to bring this whole folder in here that I have got. All right, so this is up near the reservoir. Apologies for the sound. I'm just going to kill that. Where are we? Yeah, so basically like log footage here, people running past as we go through there. My process, and I think this will play back. Yeah, it looks like it's playing back fine. This is actually on my MacBook Pro M1 Max, or yeah, that thing. And that's on the hard drive itself. So you will need a fast hard drive or RAID or something to play this back. You can't play it off like a, USB Western Digital My Passport things that I've shown you before. I use that for backup, not so much for editing. Or you could make proxies off this and then reconnect for outputting. Okay, so this is obviously log, and I've got some shots here pulling up on the Billionaire's row. Someone running past the reservoir. Beautiful day a spring day in New York. So what I would do is just select all of these and right click and go LUT. And the one that I've found that I actually like, I don't know why I don't like these Canon ones, but the RE one with Alexa Log Cedar X709 I've found is a really good place to start in terms of just getting something that's not too aggressive, and then you can take that in for a color grade and just sort of, oh, I didn't put that in. Let me see. Let's go to here and we'll just go create new timeline. Cool. And this is our shot here, and we'll go into the color. All right, so let's just pull this up here. So we've got this shot. And this is where, just to get things into the line, I would be dragging this out a bit. Oh, that's too much. And with these waveforms that you can't see behind my head, just making sure that it's not peaking, and I'm getting the mids, the gamma in there, and then the lift down there a bit. I mean, you could just hit auto. What does auto do? Sort of in there. Yeah, that needs a lot more work. But in terms of the detail, that should be pretty good. There's a lot going on in there. So the Davinci Resolve, in terms of its the way that it handles the Canon RAW images is like very easy. So straight out of this camera, it works, it's fine. As I showed you was it last week, and there's another week that I showed you in terms of how to make proxies in Resolve, and so I think that's a great way to, if you're working with slower drives, that after you've done this sort of shoot, you can just bang out some proxies, bring that in, edit it, and then it'll relink once you go through to do the color rendition there. All right, so the next thing that I tried to do was bring in the photos into Capture One, and I had problems with that because it seems like Lightroom and Capture One, the programmers like to make their own calibrated color profile for each camera as it is developed, which is great and appreciated. It just takes them a long time. It takes them 6 months to make a new profile, and from what I gather, this R5C should be, I think it should be identical to the R5, and there is a hack on YouTube that I found on Monkey Pixels, so thank you for putting that out there, which was a good way to get that into the shot. So I have, again, let's go back to my Mac here. So in Capture One, I've got some images that I've brought in here of Central Park Tower. These are from the R5C, but they didn't come in like that. So if I go import, and if I choose from my desktop, I have some stills here. So these are some of the original ones. If I review for import, nothing shows up. It won't actually read it won't read that. So what you've got to do is you've got to go to this website, which is exiftool.org, and download the package here, so Windows or Mac, which I downloaded, and you install that. And then basically you will open up Terminal like this. And then also on, I've just saved this here. All right. So this is where you need to, into Terminal, you would type xftool space dash model equals quotation marks. Make sure they're not smart quotes. Make sure they're standard quotes. Canon EOS R5, so we're dropping the C so that these programs will think it's an R5 image. And there's a space, and then the pathway that this is going to be found at. So this was my previous pathway here. So let's try that. I'm just going to copy this, and I'll paste this into the description here after the show. So if you're coming to this afterwards, you can do that. All right, so I'm going to paste that in there, but then I need to get the address. So what I'm going to go is back to my folder here, and I'm just going to copy, sorry, not the folder, the stills one. So at the root level of the stills folder, I'm going to copy that, Command C, and then I've got my space here, and I'm going to paste that into the terminal. So now I've got this command, and then the space, and then users, DJF desktop stills. This is where I found the images, and if I hit, let me just make sure we can see that it's going to do something here. Now I've got my key and go enter, and you'll see down here it's taken a little bit, it's saying it's already finished, but then it's like there's an image here that hasn't been finished yet. So there we go. It looks like it's finished. Okay, so what this has done is it's taken the original file and has added on this underscore original to it. So that's not changed other than its file name. And next to it, it has duplicated the file, and it has basically, it's the same file, but there's some metadata that has been changed. So we've just gone into the metadata of the model field, and we're saying this is a Canon EOS R5, not an R5C. So now when I go back to Capture One, and if I go import, and you can see I'm actually in this stills folder. So under my desktop stills, and all these ones are here. And if I go review for import, it's now, you can now see these three files that were the ones, and I got a duplicate there, were the ones that had the changes. So that's obviously not an ideal way of like doing your images, but that did get me out of a spot when I had shot hundreds of images for a client, and I realized like I have no way of processing this, other than maybe like taking it into Canon's RAW tool and then exporting it all and bringing it back in. And that's just, it's big file sizes, and I want to work with the RAW file for archiving, for sorting through it, and also for the best color. So that's what I'm doing until apparently in July, Capture One is going to update this. So just kind of waiting around for that. All right, so let me see if I can, where am I? It's going to be, let's get back to my shot here. Okay, what else have I got? I took some notes. Okay, so I think the raw LT footage is going to be a great compromise in terms of color space and getting 444 12-bit imagery that's not too expensive in terms of, I think it's about a gigabit. And it's 8K, which is, amazing resolution. The worst thing about this in terms of cinema is the batteries. The LPE6NH is meant to pull about 40 minutes. And I'm not sure if it's just that like the new batteries that I have mix in with the old ones, but I was regularly putting in, or my camera assistant was like putting in batteries that would have like 10 minutes on them. And I just felt like I was always like, oh, your camera's dead. And so in cinema mode, this is burning through power in a way that is not good for a shoot. So if I wasn't doing gimbal work, I would be using a, trying to work out if I got one. I might do. Somewhere in here. Yeah. And my cases. I would be using one of these, which is a LPE6 with it. This one has a down converter in it, which you got to make sure and be very careful, otherwise you'll blow up your camera. And then this is pulling DTAP power. So that's one way of like. But then you're in a rig, right? Like you're in a situation where you are probably on a tripod or something, and it's a longer form interview, and it's a bit more of a rig situation. So not ideal for gimbal work. Although with like maybe like the handlebars of the Ronin, you could put a V-mount battery on that. The other way to do power is in the USB-C on the side. That will actually accept sort of 9 volt, 3 amp through there, and you can run it that way. But I don't have any of those power banks. I've got more of the V-mount batteries from my other production stuff. So yeah, I think the batteries were probably the main thing. With this battery grip on here, with the R5, so I also had an R5 on the shoot. That actually did the whole day on 2 batteries in the battery grip. But then I usually shoot with this closed, so I'm sort of looking through here rather than with the LCD open. So that's hopefully hopefully more efficient. Yeah, what else have we got? The Ronin worked well. I think when I was shooting this stuff, and I'm out in the park, and so for this sort of shot, I was on a tripod. So on a Ronin, obviously switching between stills and video is not good in terms of the ergonomics of it, because if you're holding a Ronin, you're sort of balancing it, whereas with stills, you want to get your hands into it. But when I was on a tripod and I had this kind of fixed on a tripod and I'm shooting video, and then I could flick across and I could get the same sort of thing in horizontal stills. That was pretty good. And then I was also sort of flipping it so I could get some portraits of these buildings and that kind of thing. Actually, there's one more thing, which was so what I've got here in this lens is this Kolari drop-in filter, and this will pull out like this. Hopefully that will. And I wonder if you can see this changing effect. No. All right, hopefully we're back. I'm getting error messages from YouTube here. So stick with me, trying to get that up and running. I don't know what that is. All right, if you're having trouble seeing me, I'm back. Thank you, Eric. I'm still getting error messages from YouTube, so I don't know what the deal is, because it should be fine, but I rebooted my ATEM, so maybe it's something in the ATEM. I'm not sure. Wasn't talking about polarizing filters. Okay, so let me see if I can get back to here. Okay, so the good thing about this drop-in filter is that for building shots, it means that I can get a polarizing filter happening without having to pull anything out of the computer, out of the Mac, sorry. Let me, not that one. Nope, we need to go over here. All right, there we go. So the difference here is obviously like looking up this building. This is with the CPL rotated one way, and then if you rotate it the other way, then you're cutting all of that light that's hitting the glass, and so you're getting a different look on the building, which it could be desirable or might not be. I quite like this in terms of the maybe looks a bit more sunsetty and contrast against the blue sky, but that's sort of what the polarizing filter is doing, particularly on the lower part of the building here. It's cutting some of that light, so it's not as bright, and you can see a bit more sort of through it. So that was very handy having that like built into this while I was shooting buildings and outdoors, rather than having to put filters on the front and change that with the lenses. So that's all sort of built in, not just like variable ND, but something that is a circular polarizer. So that is, yeah, that was good. All right. What else we got? I think that's about it in terms of the things that are new in the one thing that was new on the R5C that I hadn't seen because I'm coming from like C200. Let me see if I can zoom in here. Was the view assist mode. So if you don't want to see log while you're shooting log, then that's not actually found under the CP menu here. Normally that would have been under this menu. It's actually over under one of these menus. I know there's like a ton of menus going on here. Output, view assist, this one. So it's this little screen display, and then menu 7, which is view assist for the LCD. You might want to turn that on. And for all of these ones, you can turn them on or off. So now when we go back here, it's actually giving me much more true to finished picture look. So that's the way that is dealt with, which is I would recommend using when you're shooting. Otherwise, you might find that you're not. Where are we? Hang on a second. Yeah, you might find that you're not monitoring everything in the same way that you would otherwise. Like, for example, if you're in the wrong color balance, then that is something you might not notice as much in log. So definitely good to view things not in log. Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at some questions and see what we've got. Got to find you guys hiding somewhere under here. Eric likes the Codecs HEVC with a LUT is cool too, he says, and the playback is smooth, and yeah, there are a ton of tall skinny towers in Manhattan. It has completely changed over the last 10 years from when I got here. And he was talking about the zoom in on that sensor, which yeah, I mean, this is, an 8K sensor. So if I go to, where are we? This one. Yeah, and then we just zoom in. I'd say we're looking pretty sharp across the New York skyline here. That's at 67%. This is 100% in terms of pixels. And then if we go right in, what's this? 300%. So that is starting to, I don't think that's fully rendered there. But we're starting to see the pixels. So that's 100% there in terms of the pixels. So we're getting good resolution there across the board. All right, what else we got? Any mic line inputs on the R5C, any changes from the R5? I actually haven't looked at that. That's a good question. I don't think so. I think it's still, if I move this up around here, I think it's like headphones, mic port. It's still got the small HDMI and it's got USB-C. I think the main thing that I'm excited about is, not that. Where am I? PTZ2, this one. The main thing I'm excited about is this timecode port here. If I move this around. So I'm contemplating getting 2 R5Cs and then using a timecode input on them so we can sort of shoot 2 cameras and have that in sync with audio. And it just seems like a really neat way to run multicam. But yeah, this is what we're looking at in terms of the ports. We've got the mic input and the headphones, and I wouldn't rely on this necessarily in terms of the audio in for that. I'm contemplating getting the Tascam, which actually goes on this one. So I think if you can see down here, it's a smart port. So there's actual connectors that will run phantom power, and then it'll go digitally into the camera. But I've also heard some horror stories from one of my friends who owns this camera and has said that I think it was a Tascam unit, unplugging the phantom Tascam unit blew it up or something like that. So I think it was, I don't think she blew up the camera itself. Yeah. GoToWeb says an Apple camera coming soon. So I don't know. Do you reckon they will? I was actually shooting a quick headshot for my wife yesterday at home, and I didn't have any of my gear at the apartment, so I shot it raw on the iPhone, and oh man, like once you get into the pixels on that, and you're like, it's just not, it does not have the detail that a proper camera has. So I'm thinking, I've always liked Canon for their lenses and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like an iPhone still has a long way to go. So we'll see if Canon does bring out a stills camera, what that would be. Yeah, all right. So I'm gonna switch gears now. What do we got? 48, we've got about 10 minutes. And I had a question at the top of the show from GoToWeb Technologies, which is, can you show us the function that switches mode between program and preview in companion mode? Now, yes, this is complicated, but I will show you what I've got in my profile. Let me see what I'm going to do here. I'm going to bring up one of these. I think I'm going to bring up this side because this all changed. Give me a second. Got to get rid of this comment. Okay, so let's go back to companion. I think I'm all set up now. All right, so I'm set up. We have companion, and what he's talking about is, actually you can see it on, where is it? Yeah, I'll show on my, hang on, let's see if I can bring this up on the, no, is that it? No, wrong button. It's Stream Deck, here we go, okay. Sorry guys, I'm pressing a whole lot of buttons here. Okay, now I've got it, there we go. What he is talking about is this button. Took me a long time to get there. So in the Stream Deck profile that I've built for the ATEM Mini Extreme, under the clock button is a mode button. So it says preview and then goes to program there. So the idea here is that without switching pages, you can, on your home switching page, change between your input buttons, either putting something to program or putting something to preview. So by default, it's preview because that's what I think is the most professional in terms of being, as a switcher, being able to see something, build a shot, and then cut it so it goes to air clean. But certainly when you are on your own and, or even if you are, cutting for a client, there's times where you just need to go really quickly. And that's where putting this into the program mode means that like each time you cut these, it's going to cut. So I'm hitting 1, 2, and then I'll go back to that. All right, so that's what that's doing. Whereas if I put it on preview mode, then you can't see this, but in the preview, in my multi-view up here, that's where it's switching. So what does that look like in terms of, let's go across here, in companion. So this is where, for each of these, so these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then media player 1 and 2, super source, and then black. Black color 1, color 2, and bars if you hold that down. These are the input buttons that when I switch on to that will go, the clock button here will go red to show that they're going to line. Okay, so basically what I've got is I've built it's kind of complicated. So it's, because it took a ton of like building and testing and then like making sure that everything was hitting the right thing. Let's start with button 1. So I've basically got the sort of short press, long press thing happening as well because, so this first level is looking at if I hit, I'm not sure if I can explain this because it's got a ton of stuff in here. Okay, so short press is going to do preview or program. Long press is actually going to change the HDMI out. So if I hit, at the moment it's on, let me see if I can get this up. Ta-da, wrong page. Bring this across here. When I rebooted my ATEM, the inputs switched around, but we'll see if we can get this. I'll go from this side. I don't like this angle because now I'm looking off screen. That's why I had it on the other screen, but we're going to run with it. Okay, so what I'm doing is, yeah, you'll see at the moment it's on program. So when I look at my auto cue here, I have HDMI 1 going into the auto cue so that I can see what's going on to program. And then down here, that's telling me that this is going to program. If I held down MP2, it's going to show me multi-view in the screen that I've got looking at here. Or for example, if I hold down PTZ1, it's going to be showing me input 1 directly onto camera. So I can cut program and do anything like that and maintain that input. Where that helps is like if I have a, just say something on my computer that I want to read notes and I want that in the auto cue, then I could hold down like Mac 1, for example, and now my Mac screen 1 is in the auto cue, and I could read off my notes while also cutting a program separately. So, and also if you're in a venue with, you know, like an iMag screen and you're sending something to a projector, this is the same sort of thing where you could push a different projector to a room than you are to people who are live streaming remotely. So I'm going to go back to program because that's my confidence monitor as a one-man band here to know that like, hey, am I actually sending you the picture? So as I'm talking about this screen here, that you're actually seeing that. So that's what this is doing. Now, a number of times before I've talked on this channel about how to build a long press and short press, and it's something that the companion guys I think are going to put in one day natively, but haven't yet. It would eventually turn up under here. At the moment, you've just got regular button or else page button numbers, but this is something where there may be future buttons coming. But for the moment, the way this works is basically under here, I have these OSC modules. So if you go to OSC and you type in here, you got generic OSC, you would add that in. And we're basically turning this module on and off, and we're sending a command to that module. And if it's off, then the command doesn't get through. And if it's on, then the command does go through. So that's how that happens. All right, so when I hit PTZ1, this is saying enable OSC. So I've turned on OSC. And then as I release the button, it is saying send this message to OSC, which is basically saying, hey, OSC, press bank 5525. So this is saying go to page 55 and hit button 25. So if we go page 55 and then button 25 is down here, and so it's hitting this button. When I hit this button on page 1, this is triggering this button up here, which if we look here, now this is split into another OSC. So I've got my first one, which is long press and short press, and then I've got 2 additional OSC modules where I've got a preview one and a program one. I've just relabeled them PVW and PGM to make sure that I know what I'm doing as I'm programming it, but they're basically OSC. All right, so now what I'm saying is send this message without arguments for both of these. So hitting program and preview with this, which is hit bank 58.9 or else 58.25. So if I jump ahead, 58.9 is this one. So hit preview, or else 58.25 is this button here for program. And now what you'll see here is, sorry, I need to reduce this down a little bit so you can see what I've got going on here. Excuse me. I should have muted my mic. Okay, so now what we've got is a very simple command, which is basically put PTZ1, or put HDMI input 1 to program, or else if I click on the preview, put PTZ1 to program. So that's basically the tree that it is stepping down in terms of those commands. And then if I go back here, what do we got? Yeah, that's about it. And then if I go back to page 1, this clock button is the one that is switching modes for us, which is basically it's a latch toggle button. So I'm saying when I press it, it's latched down, and then it's toggled down, and then when I press it again, it's going to release it. So by default, it's in preview, and when you press it, it's going to hit program. So when I latch it on, it is program is turning on the program OSC module, yes, and it's turning enable, no, turning off the preview one. And then as you unlatch it, is basically the reverse of that. The final thing is feedback states, so that you know what is happening for each module here. So we've got PTZ1, and you'll notice when I hit this button, all of these buttons are changing, and they're changing their color based on whether those modules are on or off. So if I scroll down under feedback, and this is where it gets really complicated because there's like a ton of like internal instances. So, and I've set colors here for that. And then on top of that, I've got program and preview colors. So this is like the base color is dark green and dark red. But then when we get into what's on program, so for example, Super Source at the moment is on air, hence why that is in the red there. But if I wanted to, and Super Source is also in my preview, so that's why you're not seeing any green highlights over here, because the red is taking priority. But for example, if I wanted to line up camera 1, I would hit that one. And so now you can see PTZ1 is in preview. So if I hit cut, here I am on the screen. So that's how that is working. Whereas if I hit, sorry, not that one. If I hit the clock and put it into program mode, I could, for example, without cutting, just by pressing PTZ2, as in my camera 2, I could just put that straight to line, and then that's what I've got in there, and I can come back and cut here. So hopefully you got some of that and figured out kind of what's going on there. But there was it took a long time of trying to work out where to put stuff on pages, and once you plot a path, you're kind of locked into that, and to make any changes becomes like a ton of recoding. I don't know if I say coding, but like refiguring it out. Hence why like all of that is in my the paid profile on my website. So if you don't want to do all that I just showed you, you can go buy that one. Otherwise, if you have your head across it, that's basically the understanding behind it, and you can maybe adapt that for your own functions. Maybe something that's not preview and program, you could do that for keying, or you could any other functions that you want to have that sort of capability for. All right, let's have a look. I'm going to wrap up very soon, and I think that's about it. He says thanks. So I think we're about good to go. I'm going to wrap up there. Yeah, sorry about that mid-show problem. I don't know what that was. I'm going to have to look into that, because that happened last week or week before. And the only way I found to fix it was to like reboot the ATEM, which is not ideal when you're midstream. So that gets me a bit nervous about what's going on with the ATEM. I don't even know. It's like, this is the sort of thing that's hard because there's no dialogue. There's nothing saying like, this is the problem, look into this area. So I don't know, run a backup. You know, maybe I'll have my ATEM mini just on backup to have things ready to go. But yeah, that's what we got. And I'll see you next week. Have a good week. Hope you enjoyed the R5C. And until then, I'll see you online. All right, see you guys.